Good afternoon, Emily Robinson. Welcome on VH Berries.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am extremely grateful because the book I am currently holding was imported to Canada from the United States, and at the customs I heard that it was intercepted because it contains too much knowledge, and in this case I am forwarding you the fine that they gave me, a very heavy one, which consists of you having to write 2 or 3 dozens more of them before the next total solar eclipse in 3 days.
Wow. Amazing. Honored. I'm so honored that you have the book and that it made its way to you. And my goodness, what a customs toll. You better get to work.
Absolutely, Emily Robinson. And I am saying that because you have a groundbreaking literary style, and I can now say that I am a Robinson bibliobibuli because I am excessively reading your words with an almost boundless appetite. How are you doing today?
You are so kind. I'm doing so beautifully. I'm so thrilled and touched to be here, and that was the kindest thing ever. Consumed means so much to me. It was like my childhood dream to write a book, and I never expected it would be one quite like that. But that's what I had to write when I was in college. That's kind of what was bubbling and needed to get out of me to help process things. And also, formally, I found it was a really exciting way to kind of push the bounds of language in a way that I found exciting and creatively fulfilling. So I'm just really touched that you're reading it. I'm just happy to be here.
You were exploring many sides of your childhood through that piece of art, and I would love to discuss about Consumed, because this is one of the best books of the 20s. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Of course. Thank you for that and for that question. So Consumed is very much about the way trauma lives in the body, but it's told in, I think, a funny and dark and twisted way, hopefully. It's very intense, and sometimes I warn people, which then my friends are always like, you have to stop warning people because it's a fun book. And I do think it kind of is fun and funny and also really tragic and deeply upsetting. So hopefully it straddles those lines. It was really born out of, I wrote it after my sophomore year of college when I was processing some deeply upsetting things that happened in my past from people that I had trusted, and it was kind of unable to, I was in therapy, but I wasn't able to fully process it yet, and it was sort of, anyway, a lot had happened that semester. Sophomore year can be a rough time it was for me, and it can be for many people, and so basically that summer I ended up I was supposed to be filming a movie, and the financing fell apart at the last minute, which happens with indie film. And so I had 6 weeks to kill over the summer, and I wound up going to a farm in Italy and staying there and woofing. So I was working for room and board. And they had really bad Wi-Fi, and they didn't want you streaming. And I read all the books that I brought in like the first day or two. And all the content that I had downloaded was kind of, went really fast. And so I was left with nothing but a blank page. And at the time I was getting my degree in creative writing I love writing. It's always been kind of a creative outlet that has existed alongside acting, and it feels like an extension in a different way to kind of explore similar concepts. And yeah, so I started writing actually a screenplay version of what would become Consumed. And the story was very clear, but the way I was telling it wasn't really working yet. I knew all of the big beats and it just kind of like came to me. And it felt very just real, and like I had to tell it, and like I knew these characters because they were all kind of different versions of me and what I was feeling and going through. And I had, at the time was dealing with, because of sort of all the trauma I was going through, it sort of manifested in disordered eating. And so there is sort of a content warning of that is like a theme of the book, is sort of as Amber's body falls apart. I should give a bit of a plot line. Basically, our protagonist Amber, she gets violated by a friend of hers, who then becomes not a friend of hers, and so she leaves and she goes to Italy, shocker, and works on a vineyard where she falls in love with this other girl, Natalia, a farmhand. All the while, her body, she stops being able to keep food down, and her body starts to break down. But she's trying to repress sort of what she left behind in New York. And so that sort of is like the premise of the story, and it goes on from there. And so, yeah, thematically, there were a lot of things that I was dealing with in my personal life, and this felt like a narrative way for me to process it, and also to kind of explore from a detached perspective and create meaning. And so the story was there, but the sort of presentation wasn't. And then over the course of the next 2 years in college, I workshopped it as a book. And so I would write like 30 pages at a time for my workshops, and some people were really into it, and a few people were like, why do you keep writing ums and likes? And I'm like, that's just how I write. I'm not a stuffy writer. Like, I like writing dialogue, and I like writing the internet, and I like translating these very modern, Gen Z things into the literary canon. Like, I like figuring out how to translate things that haven't been taken seriously and take them seriously. And so that's a lot of what I was trying to do with this book. In fact, there were supposed to be memes in the book, but we couldn't figure out how to license them because there are so many different. It's very hard to copyright a meme, or, because, the origin of the original photo versus, who originally put the caption on it and who created the idea for the meme. Like, it was pretty hard to source that, but there would have been memes in the book if we didn't hit a roadblock with the copyright law. And so, yeah, so this was sort of, the end of my college experience was workshopping this under Hilary Leichter, who's an incredible writer who wrote the book Temporary and the book Terra Story, and then Sam Lipsyte, who's written many, many books, who's also just an incredible writer, who actually his book The Ask is kind of maybe about Columbia, which is where I went to school and studied under them. And they've just been really supportive and wonderful. And I was trying to find a publisher for it during the pandemic, which was a crazy time to try to do anything. And so I wound up eventually finding Grey Borders, this small press in Canada that really understood it and has been wonderful to collaborate with. So I'm very grateful.
If I understood correctly, Emily Robinson, you had 6 weeks to kill, and at this precise moment we are talking, it has been 6 months that Consumed was released, and I feel that when you're talking about it, this is a huge relief. What is your self-reflection after half a year concerning Consumed?
Yeah, it is a huge relief. I think in general, I've just always wanted to write, and I've always wanted to be a published writer. I've always wanted to write a book. And so it is kind of the fulfilling of this childhood dream, which is really crazy. And I haven't really fully processed that. Like, there was one moment that we had a book event at Skylight Books in Los Angeles where I went to tons of book events growing up. we had a few book events in LA, and all of the places that we did them had like a lot of emotional significance. Because I was like a book event fiend as a child, and I grew up in New York and LA. And anyway, it was revisiting a lot of the places where I was like, I'm obsessing over these authors, and to be in that space as an author was very, very cool and full circle. And Bo Smothers is a friend who works at Skylight, who really, with the help of some of our mutual friends and family, really made that event especially special, with like a cake that had like blood on it and balloons and all of the things. And that was, I think, the first moment that it felt like, wow, it's really in the world. But I think that because of the content, it's been interesting because I've been with the story for a long time, and it's been a journey of discovering and rediscovering how I relate to it. And because as much as it deals with themes that are themes that I've grappled with myself, it's very much fiction. And so it's been interesting seeing how I come to understand what I was trying to tell myself. It's almost like I left myself a note, and now I'm kind of trying to like translate it. And so, yeah. And also in the meantime, since between when I initially wrote the book and when it came out, I had also written a script for it that I'm trying to produce. Now that I kind of understand the inner world of it and what needs to be on the page or on the screen in order for the emotional truth of the story to be communicated visually. And so I've really lived with this story for quite some time. And it's one that it feels just like the ugliest and most beautiful parts of my brain. And so because of that, it's incredibly vulnerable to have it out in the world. And it's been really exciting to have people that I know and that I don't know read it. And I know one of the incredibly like meaningful moments for me was when we were getting people to blurb it for the back of the book. And I sent it to some people that I know and who have been, served as sort of mentors to me. And some of them even have moderated events, like Susanna Fogel moderated my event at Barnes & Noble at the Grove. And she, I don't know, like people that I just really respect really liked it. And it resonated with them in ways that I didn't know that it would. And it's created sort of community in a way that I had been scared of. And now it's just felt really gratifying and beautiful and restorative. So I'm very grateful for that.
It was Emily Robinson, a very restorative process, and Consumed is talking about the digital age, but we are also putting the tip of a foot on a journey of psychotherapy, self-exploration, emotional awakening, and also the eating of human flesh by another human being.
Yeah, it does grapple with that. But again, to me, I think I was reading a lot of queer poetry in that moment, when I wrote this. And so to me, it just felt like a way to kind of talk about sort of the creating of this codependency and loving someone so much that their problems become yours, that you become devoured by that. Like, I think that, I don't know. I think that there are lots of interpretations of like, it feels like it's happening in the book, but is it happening? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that. I mean, I know when writing it, it was really tough. I definitely did not write it as graphically as it wound up becoming. And Sam Lipsyte, when I was doing this independent study with him, he was like, Emily, like, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you, but like, you gotta go deeper. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yes. And then my search history became really, I was like Googling all sorts of body parts. I was like, the NSA, like the government definitely has my name on a list. It was definitely a process, and I definitely had nightmares. I'm glad not to be writing the sort of end of the book, because it was, it's a tough thing, but it felt like if I didn't go there and kind of do the story justice, then it wouldn't be fair to the characters and do, it wouldn't tell the story justly. It wouldn't do it justice. And so I kind of had to get over myself and write things that I wasn't expecting to write. I grew up watching rom-coms, I'm a pretty tame person. I go to bed at like 10 p.m. So this was a bit of a change for me, which was fun, a nice challenge,
Furthermore, Emily Robinson, I just learned the fact that you are going to sleep at 10 p.m. in the evening, and to come back to the very first pages of Consumed, you are setting the context around Amber, a character whose desire is not to be desired, because she's waiting with envy to be older, aged, past erotism, and also to be erased from sight and to be unseen, forgotten, and ignored.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is definitely how she, that's like verbatim how she is feeling. But that's her trauma response. That's like, she felt unsafe in her body, and that means that her body became a vulnerability, and this is her desire to be divorced from it. And I think something that feels relevant is like, just to sort of step away from the book, but in my personal life, like, I feel like you grow up and you're not really aware of your body unless you get a scratch and it starts bleeding, your knee starts bleeding, or this happens. Like, it's just kind of like, how you exist and what you do, right? And then there's like a point in life where you start to realize that you are perceived, right? And everyone has a different moment. I know for me, there's a moment where you realize how you're perceived. And then there's like a moment that you, especially as like, if you grow up gendered as a girl, you realize that you're being perceived in like a sexual way. And I remember one of the first times, not that I myself was sexualized, but that I was realizing that I had this sort of, I had access to this power that I had to figure out how to wield, kind of. And I had, like, it was there was an audition for Modern Family, honestly. And it was like a Sofia Vergara type for this girl who was going on a date with like Luke, or I don't know, it was a date with someone, and it was like Sofia Vergara type. And I have really small boobs. I've always had small boobs. And she needed to have big boobs. And so we went to Victoria's Secret, my mom and I had no boobs at the time. And we were like, I need to have boobs. And they were like, okay, perfect. We have this push-up bra, and it's like 3 sizes up. And you're like, great, awesome. It'll make me have some boobs. And we got this bra, and they're like, oh, are you going for Modern Family? But there was this thing of like, I saw in the thing that I had to be like sexy. And it was like, oh, okay, so you do this, and you look like this, and you go like this. And like, you're like trying to figure out how to fit into this idea that someone else is perceiving. And I think once you kind of get perceived as that sexy, as that thing, that object, when you don't want to be, and then get violated, not because of it, but like get violated, then all of a sudden that becomes scary, where it's like, oh, am I going to be interpreted that way? Or it can become scary. And I think it becomes scary for Amber. And so that's where she's coming from, where it's this thing of, oh God, I didn't realize, I don't want to be, do I look like I'm breaking? She is going through so much that it is easier to not be perceived. And so that's what she's desiring.
This is Emily Robinson, a very singular approach when it comes to character development. And I am wondering, if you were writing Consumed in a linear way, or if you already had since the beginning, the sight of the ending.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know when I knew the shape of the plot, but I know that I wrote a bad script and it was short. It was like 80 pages or something. I wrote a script that basically was the plot. And then I started writing the book. And so I knew kind of the shape of where it was going pretty early on. It was just figuring out who these people were and what they were going through to get to those places. I knew what the story was trying to communicate, but I didn't know the specifics. And so writing the book was kind of this journey of letting the characters kind of have a voice to take us on that journey, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, Emily Robinson. And I could add the fact that the cherry on the top would be the cover of Consumed, because we can see 13 times the word consumed with blood on the right bottom corner. And this is a singular design from Priscilla Brett. And I have a theory, which is that she didn't wanted to put more times the word consumed on the cover than there is letters in her full name.
I love that. I love that so much. I don't have that theory. I didn't even think of that, but I love that. Yeah, I think we wanted to play with the idea of the consumed getting devoured and then it being delirious in some ways. So that's sort of how she figured out that approach. And playing with color was something that I was really interested in. She sent it to me, the initial design, in 2 different colors. And I was like, I really love it, but like, I feel like I wanted to feel the internet and this generation more, because the original cover was, I think it was black, and then maybe there was one that was red with black. I don't know. I forget. I should know this. And she had a bunch of amazing ideas, and it was really fun. I was very fortunate to be able to be let in a little bit on her process. And I was like, can we try it in pink? Just because I feel like there is like a lightness and a youthfulness to the story that I wanted to communicate in the cover. I didn't want it to seem like a scary thriller horror thing, because it is, as much as we're talking about cannibalism and these really dark topics, it's actually just a story about this like college age, sophomore girl who's going through it, so it's like a lot of it is her talking to her friends, and it's like it should feel relatable. That's kind of a non-word, but it should feel like talking to your friends and being on Twitter and kind of the brainworms of all of that. And so we were trying to find a way to communicate that with kind of the horror of it in the cover. And so that's what we did. And then for the hardcover, there's a special edition hardcover that Priscilla hand bound herself. That's crazy. And what we did, the inspiration for that was Lucio Fontana, who's talked about a lot in the book. He's this Italian artist who works a lot with like cutting the canvas and kind of cutting into the next dimension, and using the third dimension to really emphasize it and create his art. And so we were able to create this physical object of art for the book, which was really cool. So it's this like deep red leather bound book with a slash through the center, and then actually when you receive it, there's a bookmark, a leather bookmark hidden in it. So then you have to like dig your hand in through the slit to grab the bookmark out, which I think is pretty sick. So there are other surprises too in the hardcover, but that's just the cover.
There are more surprises on the hardcover version of that book. And now that you are saying that this version exists, I am very curious about it. But unfortunately, it might not pass the customs border between the United States and Canada.
So funny. It might not. No, it does.
If it does, it does. And additionally, Emily Robinson, there is my favorite quote from that book Consumed that says, "Just so two ants drawn together in my bathtub." And it reminded me of Us, a love story, but I truly wanted to replace the end because it just reminded me to buy an ant pest control product.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's a fun book, you know? It's deeply dramatic and also not dramatic at all. And it's kind of like, I think that's like what being young is, right? It's like everything is, you're kind of having some of the biggest first experiences of your life that are huge. Absolutely. But then you're also having these feelings that are huge and small and big, and you don't have any frame of reference really. And you're on your own, for the first time, really, and trying to figure yourself out, and where you fit in and who your real friends are, and all of it's just changing so much, and so it's scary, and that's a lot of what it's exploring. So, and it's fun because again the text, we get a little fun with it, you know. The text starts breaking down. I love it's fun. It's a fun book. I had a lot of fun working on it, so I'm happy it's in the world.
You are happy that Consumed is in the world. And I noticed also, Emily Robinson, that the part 2 only starts at page 163, very close to the end. Mm-hmm. How do you explain that?
Well, I don't want to give too much away. There's a reason that we need a part 2. It is a third person perspective, but it's a very close third person. But I think the second part comes in with a bang. So I haven't heard anyone too upset that it's short and sweet or not so sweet.
We will have Emily Robinson to contend with that vague and mysterious explanation that you just gave us here.
I don't want to
You mentioned that this is going soon to be a feature film. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new construction site?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we're, trying to get it up and running. We were closer before the strikes, and then all of a sudden we're kind of back at the beginning. But we have a script and we have a great producing team, and we are hopeful that in the next year or two we will hopefully be in production. So hopefully coming to screen soon, or maybe not soon, but in a few years.
This is to come up very soon in the upcoming years, Emily Robinson. And one action that could help the process would probably be to go and write and find the inspiration at the Zingos Cafe with 50s neon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going to find the inspiration for sure, right? Yeah, yes. It's been really fun. Right now I'm working to direct my first feature because I love writing, I love directing. I feel like they're all different sides of the same coin. So, it'll be fun.
Those are Emily Robinson, different sides of the same coin. And I actually mentioned the Zingos Cafe with 50s neon light for a very specific reason. This is because this place is playing at the opening of a short film named Oleander that you did.
Yes, I did not even put that together. I was like, wait, what? That's so funny. You're amazing. And then I was like, what? Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, I did a short Oleander that I acted in by Kate Hackett, who's a wonderful documentary editor and director, a feature, a narrative editor, or director, documentary editor, narrative director. We got there. Yeah. Yeah, she's
love. She's wonderful, and I would love to discuss about that project directed by Kate Hackett, and in which we can discover the institution of transformation.
Yeah, I mean, it talks a lot about sort of sexual liberation and basically I play this girl Oleander who is this has a YouTube channel, and she's all about sexual freedom and liberation, but she comes from a very religious family that is very against that, and so it sort of is talking about that tension and explores explores that tension. It's been a while since I filmed that one, so I'm not super. It's been a while since I've seen it, so obviously there are some little details I forgot, but it's a special one for sure.
This is a special one for sure, and I believe that it teaches a lot of lesson in terms of filmmaking, because it helped you few years after to direct Virgin Territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think Virgin Territory I might have done before, but maybe no. I think I did Virgin Territory when I was like 16, and then I think I did Oleander when I was like 18. So I had directed before. I believe, I could be wrong. But yeah, Virgin Territory was an amazing experience. That I really did after working on Transparent, which was Joey Soloway was the showrunner who really inspired me and showed me what is possible on a set. I think a lot of times television sets can become a little bit cut and paste. Not always. There are tons of amazing TV sets, but sometimes that can happen. And Joey really made it an incredibly creative space where background actors were shown respect. Crew members could talk, everyone had a voice. Every day we would do a box, this thing called box, where you create a circle and there's an apple box in the middle. And anyone who has something to say can go and stand in the middle and say what they have to say. And there was, room for improvisation, which, sometimes happens in films, but is much rarer in TV just because it costs time and money, and there are a lot of people, and it's just hard to do that. There are a lot of pages to get through. And Joey really made me want to not just act, but direct and create spaces that felt creative and safe and exciting. And unfortunately, that show ended up having a complication that I was not privy to when I was a child. I started working on that show when I was 15 with Jeffrey Tambor, but my experience of that world was incredibly safe and productive and exciting, and made me want to direct. And so then Mel Shimkovitz, who I first worked with on Transparent, was in it, and Michelle Clooney, who I had been neighbors with. And we assembled a little team. My mom was the producer, and we directed it. I was 16. It was a movie about questioning your identity and wanting to lose your virginity. And I was 16 and still figuring myself out and my sexuality, and had not had sex. And then it went really beautifully, and we premiered at LA Film Festival, which was hosted by Film Independent at the time. And then we went to Outfest and Frameline and went to over 20 festivals, and then screened online at Outfest's digital platform that they had for about a year. We had just a really successful run. And then I actually worked with a company, and we developed it as a pilot, but pitched it to networks right as the pandemic began, literally March 11th, 2020. So it never became a TV show, but it did have a special journey and taught me a lot of things about filmmaking and writing and all of the things. So I'm very grateful for that experience.
In conclusion, Emily Robinson, what message would you give to the version of yourself in a few years that will have accomplished the adaptation of your book Consumed?
Yeah, I guess it's just thank you for keeping on. I think it's like filmmaking. Anyone in indie film knows that it's really hard and tireless, and it's like pushing a rock uphill. So, and there are just a lot of random resets. So it's hard. It's a hard industry, and I'm really grateful that I've had a lot of incredible experiences, and I hope to continue having a lot of incredible experiences, but it's not easy. And so I guess hopefully we do make this movie, and hopefully I'll be glad that I persevered, because it's a long journey.
It is a long journey that is not easy, and I am looking forward to be at the front row with some popcorns watching Consumed. Thank you very much, Emily Robinson.
Thank you. I'm honored.